Jørgen Strand Larsen's future at Wolves is in the balance, with a move to Crystal Palace still on the cards, but has it hit a stumbling block? Hi there, welcome along to our final Good Morning Transfers before deadline day, and it could be a busy one as we kick off the last crucial few days of this January window. Means we should have plenty to get stuck into with European football expert Andy Brassel and our very own James Green. Now, will that Strand Larsen deal have any impact on Jean-Philippe Mateta? We'll find out this hour. Arne Slot will be missing Jeremy Frimpong this weekend and potentially for longer. Could Liverpool enter the market for defensive reinforcements? We will hear from Slot shortly. Lucas Paqueta received a hero's welcome back at Flamengo as he returns to Brazil. Will West Ham get a replacement before Monday's 7 p.m. deadline? And we caught Hibs forward Kieran Bowie leaving this morning on his way for a medical at Hellas Verona in Italy. Very good morning to you all at home. Morning to you guys. Final stretch. You ready?
Nearly there.
Finish line is in sight. Let's get that strong finish going. Let's start with Strand Larsen, shall we? JSL. Up until last night, it was sounding very likely, wasn't it, that he was going to go to Crystal Palace. But it appears there might be a bit of a stumbling block. What is it?
Yeah, it was last night we received some reports that certain intermediaries who were dealing with this deal were expressing that Crystal Palace were ready to walk away from the deal. Now, I say mixed reports because there were other sources saying, look, conversations and talks are still happening. Look, let's not forget it's a deal that's worth 45-50 million pounds. It's a lot of money still. Sometimes takes a bit of time to organise the structure of a deal. This is supposed to be 45 million pounds plus 5 million pounds of add-ons. Now, it could be the structure of payments that's holding up. It could be how realistic the add-ons are to achieve, which can often be a stumbling block between two clubs. But the likelihood is, I think, it might be a little bit of noise from Crystal Palace to say, look, if you don't want to do a deal, no problem. We don't
Negotiating tactic.
Yeah, we don't believe that anyone else is probably going to reach the figure that we're offering to pay for the player. We seem to have clearance from the player that he's keen to join us, and we're willing to kind of push this. But this one looks like, to me, this is going to happen. It's just really a matter of time, I think.
It's a funny one, isn't it, Andy? I mean, who do you think is in a stronger position to negotiate here? Because obviously Wolves will know that Palace could potentially be selling Mateta and they need to get a replacement in. They're running out of time. But equally, Wolves know that they're not going to get the same amount of money for Strand Larsen in the summer.
No, that they're not. And what I think weighs heavier on Wolves than it does on Palace is the form of Jørgen Strand Larsen and the physical fitness of him. That is the big problem, because it was a hugely impressive first season in the Premier League. They're already taking a massive cut from what they were asking Newcastle for in the summer, obviously reflecting Newcastle's desperation at the time because they had the whole Alexander Isak situation going on. So they know they're not going to get that amount again. But this is a guy who scored like one Premier League goal all season. Now, we can say form is temporary, class is permanent. But if you're Palace, you're saying, all right, well, good luck in the open market this summer if you don't want to sell him now. I mean, I think Palace are in a really good position here.
OK. I mean, 50 million does sound like quite a lot for a player who's only scored one goal this season. I know he had a much better season last year.
Yeah, much better. Look, 14 goals last season. He's played in Spain as well for Celta Vigo, 13 goals in one of the seasons there, leading the line. He's a big, tall striker. We've seen what he can do. Obviously, things at Wolves have gone pretty horrendously up until the last few weeks under Rob Edwards this season. So he's not the only player that struggled for Wolves. This is a side that were struggling for their first victory for a long, long time. At one point, they were certainly odds on to break Derby's horrific record of Premier League points tally. So look, let's think about the bigger picture. I think for Wolves, it's an opportunity now to sell him. They lost certainly out a fair bit of money in the summer, not selling him to Newcastle United. I think they turned down £55 million for the player. So, look, it is a lot of money. I think he just fits for me. He's a big, strong forward. I think Palace want to add some pace into the wide areas. They're looking at bringing in the likes of Evan Gasson, which we're going to talk about a little bit more, I'm sure, in the way their wing-backs play as well, getting forward. They need that tall, big striker in the box. And, this could be a good fit. He's a few years younger than Jean-Philippe Mateta too. So, look, this seems like it could work well for both parties, I think, in the end.
Thing is, it's not just Palace, though, because Leeds have been interested in the striker throughout this window, but they're unwilling to go above the £40 million transfer fee.
Normally in January, just players are available who have a problem at their former club or haven't played that much or come out of injuries. But these type of players won't make us better because of the privileged situation we are in. So that means if you want to find a player who improves you, then it could cost lots of money. And the problem is in January, because everyone knows this and everyone knows that there are limited options available, you could pay overpriced for players. And this is also what I don't want us to do.
OK, interesting words there from Farker. Who do you think needs him more, Andy, Leeds or Palace?
Palace, there's no doubt about it, because the Mateta situation is coming to a head. And if you look at Leeds at the very start of the season, you're looking at them and thinking, where are the goals coming from? And that's before Dominic Calvert-Lewin starts looking like Dominic Calvert-Lewin again. You've got Lucas Mecha chipping in with a couple of goals as well, and he's improving as time goes by. They're getting goals from Brendan Aronson in midfield. I don't reckon he would be nice to have, maybe.
What do you think, because of the Calvert-Lewin injury record, that might be the reason why they want to have a bit of cover?
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that at all, but it feels to me that Leeds are in a pretty good position at the moment, whereas Palace, I mean, I don't think they can be unaffected, not just by the Mateta situation, but by the fact they're only going in one direction at the moment. They need some fresh impetus. They need some fresh blood.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point as well when Palace is mentioned. And with Leeds, look, they've got to be a little bit careful with PSR. Spent around £100 million in the summer, so they've got to be careful. It seems like they've got a limit. They're not willing to go over it. Crystal Palace are willing to go over that £40 million, so I don't think Leeds will be too fussed about that one.
Yeah, well, the interesting thing about this Strand Larsen situation, of course, is the impact it could have on Jean-Philippe Mateta and his future at Crystal Palace. Now, we heard a while ago, didn't we, James? A while ago, that Mateta wanted to leave Palace, but is he any closer to doing so at this stage?
Not right now. I'm kind of surprised that we're, 3.5 days out now till the close of the window, and we're still talking about the future of Jean-Philippe Mateta and whether he's going to be staying at Crystal Palace or whether he's going to find a home. Look, he made it clear to Crystal Palace he wants to leave in this window. He made it clear in the summer he wanted to leave the club. He wasn't going to sign a new contract. He's got 18 months left. He turns 29 in the summer, and Crystal Palace turned down bids from multiple Champions League clubs in the summer for him. There was a late inquiry from Spurs. A couple of those clubs that made a bid. Juventus, who have been linked with a move. I think they made an inquiry to try and loan him for the remainder of the season with an obligation to buy at the end, and Palace kind of brushed that away because it wasn't high enough. Other club who was interested in the summer, AC Milan. Now, there's some reports this morning coming out of Italy that AC Milan may well be back in for the player. There's Nottingham Forest that we know they made an official bid for Jean-Philippe Mateta. Crystal Palace haven't responded to that yet. Obviously, the funny part with this bit is both sides meet each other on Sunday. We know about the little rivalry now between them because of what happened with the Europa League, Conference League in the summer too. So you're kind of looking at that, maybe it's a bit of a surprise. AC Milan for me makes more sense, and a move, say, abroad to Juventus, AC Milan makes more sense than Nottingham Forest.
Where do you see him ending up if he does move?
I think it'll be the Premier League if he moves this month. I just think that's where the money is, quite frankly. Whereas Milan and Juventus will be looking at a formula, as James says, a sort of workaround so they can pay later. You know, they both have a lot of wage obligations at the moment that they need to look at. Of course, Milan have already signed Nicolas Füllkrug, who's done pretty well, actually, so far this month, certainly better than he was doing at West Ham. They've got a striker or two they need to shift, notably Santi Jimenez, who's digging his heels in and doesn't really want to go at the moment. And of course, Juventus have still got 6 months of paying Dusan Vlahovic, who's long-term injured. So they've got a bit of an issue there. So I mean, I guess from Mateta's perspective, what do you decide if Forest is your only option, really, the only realistic option from a Palace perspective? Because I think there's an argument, if you're him, to say, you know what, if I leave it to the summer, fair enough, I'm not on a free transfer, but it'll be a cheaper fee, and there'll be more clubs maybe that will fulfil my dreams. It feels to me that he's been affected a little bit by market confidence. Everything that's happened in Palace in recent weeks, it's felt a lot worse than it actually is. It's felt like everything's falling apart. And I wouldn't blame him for being a little bit spooked by that, because really, if you're Mateta, it makes far better sense to play the long game and see where you are in the summer, especially after you've had a good World Cup.
Forest interested in Mateta. Guess what? They play each other on Super Sunday. Forest host Crystal Palace. Will Mateta feature for Palace in that match? Interesting, isn't it? 1:55. You can watch that on Sky Sports Plus. OK, let's get to another player who could be coming into Crystal Palace, and that is Evan Gerson. He travelled to London last night to finalise his loan move. James, how close is this to happening? And given that Ollie Watkins picked up an injury yesterday, I mean, it might only be a small one. That's what Emery is hoping for. Is there any chance that could scupper this?
Look, sometimes when there is an injury, it can just spook a manager into kind of pulling the plug and go, do you know what, this isn't right. I'm going to go by what Unai Emery said last night. After the game, after the Ollie Watkins injury, he still confirmed that Evan Gerson is moving to Crystal Palace, and these are his words. He said it's a similar situation to Marlon. I was happy with him. I didn't want him to leave, but I accept it's a good deal for the club and for him. It's an opportunity to play, and it's another way to show his development. I accepted it. We signed a striker, signed a winger. In the last match, it's been difficult for him to play, and he decided to leave. So it sounds like despite the Ollie Watkins injury, he feels he's got enough strength and depth. And Evan Gerson travelling to Crystal Palace on a loan deal with an obligation to buy for around £28 million if certain appearances are made. And it's an interesting one, isn't it? This is a bit classic Unai Emery. He's very stern in terms of...
Makes a quick decision.
He does make a quick decision, because this is a player they signed in the summer from these, but he started 7 Premier League games, started pretty much all of the Europa League campaign so far, but he's clearly looked and gone, you know what, you're not actually right for me. I'm not actually that keen. I'm happy to pull the plug and I'm happy to move on. Daniel Marlon, same situation as he mentioned. Harvey Elliott, we've still got that boiling over a little bit. He's come into the club, he's kind of looked at him, Unai Emery, and he's gone, I'm not convinced that's money well spent. So ruthless is what I'd call Unai Emery in the market this season.
Are you surprised, Andy, in the case of Gerson, that he hasn't been a hit at Villa? Have we not seen the best of him yet in the Premier League?
We definitely haven't. But I think you look at the sort of player he is, and I just wonder where he really fits with Villa. And I think in the cold light of day, maybe that's the way Villa are looking at it. Maybe that's the way Gerson is looking at it. Because not only have they got all sorts of different forwards who have got different ways of getting at teams. But I think when you look at the fact that Gerson could also play as an attacking midfielder, well, he's not getting ahead of Morgan Rogers. You've had the re-emergence of Emi Buendia, very different players, but they're all blocking possible avenues where he could be influential for them. He needs to play. He needs to get used to English football, because he's shown at Nice that he's a class act.
Right. We have some breaking news for you regarding Arsenal. They have announced Max Dowman has signed a pre-contract agreement with the club that will lead him to sign professional terms when he turns 17 in December. And Max has had something to say as well. He says, "This means everything to me and my family. We all support Arsenal, and I really feel like I belong here." We'll be hearing from Mikel Arteta from 10 a.m. this morning, and I'm sure he will be talking about Max Dowman. Now, it's no secret, you and I spend quite a bit of time at the Emirates, James, and this is news that is likely to be welcomed very, very nicely by the Arsenal fan base.
Matt, I can't talk highly enough about what a talent this young man is. Watching him in the summer, he had a bit of a breakthrough game against Newcastle in pre-season, and then they came home from the tour, played against Villarreal at the Emirates, and I was sitting there watching. He came off the bench, and the impact he had not only just on the pitch, but amongst the crowd. Everybody stood up, everybody applauded, everybody felt the excitement of what this young man can bring to Arsenal, not just in the future, but actually in the present day and right now. An incredible talent. He lit up the Emirates that day. He just changed the narrative. It was a pre-season friendly, but it was a competitive friendly. Arsenal weren't doing too well in it. He just changed the narrative, the impetus. And when you speak to Arsenal players about what Max Dowman's like, they played with him in training when he was 14 years old. They've been talking about him for a while now. They know his ability. They trust him to give him the ball, to let him do his thing. To trust someone that young who just recently turned 16 on New Year's Eve says a lot about the player. Mikel Arteta himself made comments after the game against Newcastle and Villarreal, and he was kind of put this question, how difficult is it to manage a talented 15-year-old like Max Dowman with the responsibility that you have? And he said, well, I haven't got a choice. He's a first-team player. He's that good. And we just have to see him play.
Yeah, it's just ridiculous being able to perform at that level, at that age, against grown men, isn't it? He's injured at the moment, Max Dowman. Can't wait to see him in action again soon. Now, another story regarding Arsenal. According to a couple of the papers, Arsenal are exploring a possible summer move for the Atletico Madrid striker, Julian Alvarez, for a potential fee of around £87 million. Now, it's just a couple of rumours in a couple of papers, but this would be massive if it happened, Andy. Do you honestly think it could happen?
I have a feeling Atletico might cash out. They're at least going to consider it, I think, because there's been a little bit of an uneasy relationship between Alvarez's entourage and the club for a while. There are people around him who think that he shouldn't have signed for Atletico because maybe they're not quite an elite club. They're maybe an A- club with pretensions to being an elite club, despite the stadiums, despite the Champions League finals, despite a couple of La Liga titles interspersed with what Real Madrid and Barcelona are doing. But of course, they're not quite on the same level as Real Madrid and Barcelona. I tell you what, he's played so much football recently, which kind of, in the last couple of years recently, that's what prompted City to sell him in the first place. And now, I think they're looking at him. They were looking at building that team around him once Griezmann's gone. Now, Griezmann's still there, but will probably go in the summer. But they're looking at it and they're thinking, you know what, we're not getting that consistency out of him. And maybe that's just a knock-on, like Lautaro Martinez, from playing so much football. But maybe they're thinking, just like City thought, maybe we make it someone else's problem. Because if his entourage aren't completely bought in, and they're not getting a tune out of him on a consistent basis, they have to at least think about it.
Interesting. One to watch, quite possibly. If it happens, Arsenal may well have to sell a big player to make sure they've got the funds. We've got plenty coming up on Good Morning Transfers. Lucas Paqueta returns to Brazil. We've got some great pictures coming up of him being welcomed by the fans. But will West Ham find a replacement? Plus, we'll bring you Arne Slot's news conference. We'll have an update on their defensive issues, including on Jeremy Frimpong. Welcome back to Good Morning Transfers. Now, Arne Slot has just confirmed that Jeremy Frimpong will be missing for several weeks after picking up a hamstring injury against Karabag. We will hear more from Slot in just a moment. We're going to focus on Lucas Paqueta, who's in Brazil ahead of a move to Flamengo. It hasn't officially been confirmed yet, but we are expecting that to happen soon. And we're going to show you some pictures in a few seconds of him being welcomed by the Flamengo faithful. There you go, lovely photos. Bit warmer, I think, there than in East London right now. Lovely blue sky, and he's loving being back home, and the fans are as well. We had Tim Vickery on this show yesterday, Andy, on Transfer Talk, and he said it was a big coup for Brazilian football, and it certainly is. But equally, is it a bit of a blow for European football? We're used to seeing Brazilian stars coming this way, not going back the other way. He's still at his peak, Paqueta.
Yeah, he is, but I think the devil's in the detail there, because firstly, the fact is his form's not been amazing for a number of reasons, which we're all very aware of. You know, this was a guy who we thought would be replacing Bernardo Silva at Manchester City, and it didn't happen for those reasons. And this is someone we expected, and West Ham, when they bought him, expected to be an elite player, and he's not been. Now, in the context of West Ham, he's still been and could have potentially been useful going on. I said last time I was on here that I thought they would be best to sell him, just in terms of atmosphere, just in terms of making sure everyone's committed. And that is clearly the way that Nuno and the club have gone with transfers. James Ward-Prowse going, of course, this week. But in terms of it being a blow to European football and the power of Brazilian football, look, maybe in a couple of years' time, if Brazil is coming over and taking peak players from the Premier League, which I still think is a way off, then maybe we could talk about that as a trend. But for now, it's a player whose value has dropped, who needs to be in good nick before the World Cup. And it is still a step forward, we have to say, for Brazilian football. And the money they have compared to other South American countries, their clubs, like a Flamengo, to go and buy a player like that on Premier League wages, it does show that something's changed.
But he is a player that's been in Europe for a while now. You know, he's gone from AC Milan, Lyon, spent a lot of time at West Ham, 28 years old, World Cup year, returning home. It's something that seems to work. But for West Ham, they will be looking at their options now and what they've got. But they've already brought in Adama Traore, they've already brought in Tati Castellanos and Pablo, who've been, both of those two have been thrusted into the first team already. Crescencio Somerville, we're seeing a bit of a breakthrough moment, it feels like. His quality seems to be shining through a little bit now. They've got the creativity of Mateus Fernandes in the middle of the park as well. So, and let's not forget Jared Bowen too. So actually they've now built in this window other alternative options, not forgetting Callum Wilson, who now seems likely to stay at the club, certainly until the end of the season. So the options are there for West Ham.
They could do with another midfielder, though. I think it's fair to say.
A bit more creativity, sure. Yeah.
But it might leave them thrusted into the transfer market in the next 3.5 days to see what they can get. And Nuno's been very outspoken in saying we need players now.
Yeah. OK, they certainly do need to get out of the situation they're in. Now, let's get back to Liverpool boss Arne Slot. He's just been speaking to the media. We can hear from him now. He's talking to our reporter, Vinny O'Connor.
First of all, on any timescale on Jeremy Frimpong, what's the extent of his injury?
I will definitely not be in the squad tomorrow, so he's out for a few weeks, but not as bad as we thought he would be out. So something positive from something not so positive.
And we'll check on Ibu as well. Is he back with you?
Ibu trained with us yesterday, so trains with us today, and will be in the squad tomorrow.
Obviously, there's been a lot of talk around potential incomings, or you trying to add to your squad in this window. So probably for the last time this month, what chance do you see of bringing in a long-term target in this transfer window?
You promised me you're not going to ask it post-match.
That's yeah. Okay. I won't be asking that after the game.
Yeah, I think you know the answer. The answer is that if we think we've addressed a player that can help us, and we think it's possible, then we would do so. But those are conversations that take place not far away from here, by the way, but not in this room.
So it's looking unlikely still.
Why is
Well,
it looking
it's
unlikely?
looking unlikely, is it? So-
Okay, that's a smart way of asking it. I think I gave the answer I gave, but it's up to you if that means it's unlikely or it's likely. Yeah,
Well, I'm just thinking I'm going to have a very quiet day here on Monday.
okay, it could be. You want to play golf?
Yeah, I would love to, yeah. We'll get down to Wallasey. Looking at the game itself, though, how do you assess now the challenge you've got of finishing in the top four, and how crucial is this game to those hopes as well, given Newcastle are just 3 points behind?
Yeah, no, I think that's throughout the whole season. Every single game is crucial, but the way we've positioned ourselves now makes probably every game even more crucial, because that's definitely what we want to achieve. Then it is a crucial game, as the next one is a crucial one, as the next one is a crucial one as well. And we've experienced how tough it is to play against Newcastle in the 1.5 year I'm here now. It's always been a very tough contest, very tough game for us, but for them as well. So yeah, great game to look forward to, because we both had a good result during the week, and a home game at Anfield is always something to look forward to.
Thanks, Alan.
Hello again. Just in terms of that result as well, good win, great performance on top of that. Does it give everyone a bit of a lift, or a bigger lift round here? Did they need a lift at the moment, given the start in the Premier League to the year?
No, I prefer to win it than losing that game. So that is always helping. Every game you win helps in the first place, because we qualified for the last 16. Second of all, because it was a good win with some good performances, players scoring goals. And that's always helpful, but we are fully aware of the fact that one win isn't enough at this club. So the next one is coming fast with Newcastle. And I think that's I'm 100% sure that game is a bigger challenge than the one we faced Wednesday. But always helpful to win, especially if we've lost in the last minute at Bournemouth. Then it's always nice to have a better feeling during the week.
And I know Benny asked you a couple about players as well. I'm just wondering about Joe and Curtis. Might they be available?
Yeah, Curtis is again available. He was sick, as I said, but he is available. And Joe will not be available, but that doesn't have to take much longer anymore. But he will not be available for the weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, on it. Mo Salah got his first goal in 9 Liverpool games last time out. I just wonder if you think he's in a good position to rediscover some of his best form like we saw last season.
I think it's always about the team, and the team has to make sure he gets in good positions, and I think that's what we are doing more and more, not only with him but with many players. I think I've said this recently quite a lot. Our game in between boxes is good enough for our attackers to be often enough in promising positions. And we know that if this happens enough times, then our players will do what we expect of them, because they have so much quality. I think you were talking about Mo, but a great example might also be Florian, who was 3 minutes before the end against Bournemouth in exactly the same position as he was when he scored the 2-0. But in Bournemouth he decided to play a through pass. Now he went for his own chance and scored. This is how football works. Sometimes the ball hits the post, the ball hits the bar. Sometimes you make the wrong decision. Sometimes the execution is not perfect. But I was really pleased and happy for Mo that he scored that goal, because I think no matter how much he has scored for this club, it's always good to be on the score sheet, as it was for Federico as well, and for Florian. That always gives a bit of confidence to the team, but also to individuals.
Okay, so mixed news for Liverpool. Frimpong out for several weeks, but Kanate back and available for this weekend. Still to come, we will hear from the Newcastle boss Eddie Howe, Anthony Iraola, and we're going to have the latest on Raheem Sterling's future. Where could he end up? Stay tuned. This is Good Morning Transfers, and this is your transfer update. Crystal Palace's potential £50 million deal for the Wolves striker Jørgen Strand Larsen is hanging in the balance. Leeds United remain interested in Strand Larsen, but they are currently unwilling to go beyond £40 million. Nottingham Forest bid for Jean-Philippe Mateta remains on the table, but Crystal Palace are yet to communicate an official response. Palace value Mateta at £40 million. Staying with Forest, and they've had a £20 million bid for the Brighton midfielder Yassin Ayari rejected. Evan Gesson's proposed loan move to Palace from Aston Villa includes a £28 million obligation to buy that is triggered if certain conditions are met. Juventus have not given up hope on signing Randall Kolo Muani despite Spurs' unwillingness to let him leave. That's according to Sky in Italy. Manchester United's Joshua Zirkzee is an alternative for Juve if they are unable to sign Kolo Muani. That is also according to Sky in Italy. Don't forget, you can keep across all the latest information as it happens on our dedicated Transfer Centre blog. Just scan the QR code on the screen. It'll take you to where you need to go. Now, Kieran Bowie is in Italy to have a medical at Hellas Verona. That's after they agreed a deal worth around £6 million with Hibernian. Well, this was Bowie at Edinburgh Airport this morning. He's scored 15 times in 52 appearances since joining Hibs in 2024. He isn't expected to have completed his move to Verona in time to play Cagliari in Serie A tomorrow evening. Bowie's club performances this season have put him in a good position to be part of Scotland's squad at this summer's World Cup.
I mean, obviously, I've had 18 months at Hibs now, and I've done extremely well there, and they've done well for me. So I think for all parties, it's good. And yeah, I mean, obviously, Italy it appeals now. Obviously, there's a lot of people from Scotland that have went there and done well. And yeah, I mean, it's obviously opens up a lot of opportunities for myself and my family and stuff like that. So that's the main thing.
OK, good move that for Kieran Dowie. We're just going to break off it for a moment because we do have a bit of news coming out of Arsenal, James, regarding a potential exit.
Yeah, this might not be a surprise. Negotiations currently advancing now for Alexander Zinchenko's Arsenal exit. Now, it's understood Ajax hoping to have the Ukraine international in Amsterdam this weekend to fully undergo a medical. Now, the deal's been on hold for a little while the left-back finalises his departure from Arsenal. He's currently on a season-long loan with Nottingham Forest. There's no break clause to that deal, but Forest have been looking to cut his loan spell short. Now, once Ajax get the green light, they'll proceed with his medical and will finalise the paperwork on a 6-month contract. Now, Zinchenko's long-term future will be discussed in the summer.
OK, right. Sounds like Zinchenko on his way out from Arsenal then. Right, we're going to turn our attention to Raheem Sterling once again. What will the future hold for him? Well, we were hearing that there are 7 Champions League level teams interested. We heard that last night here on Sky Sports News. Shall we have a bit of fun? Let's just try and guess who these 7 teams might be. I mean, Andy, where in Europe and the Premier League do you think it could be a viable option?
This is a way different conversation 18 months ago. I think that's the thing, isn't it? And define interest, you know, saying, what's he doing? What are you doing? As opposed to, we definitely want to sign you. I think that's the thing.
And Champions League level can also mean a certain number of things, couldn't it?
Yeah, clubs that define themselves as Champions League level. We hope one day to be in the Champions League. You know, it's a bit open-ended. I think that's the thing, because I think what's indicative of what is out there, or maybe what's not out there for Raheem Sterling at the moment, you look at Giovanni Manna, who's the sporting director of Napoli, coming out a couple of weeks ago and saying, obviously we like him as a player, but A, we can't afford him, and B, we can't afford him when he's not ready to play now. And that's the great unknown about Raheem Sterling. Because he's not been out there for a while, players you sign in January, normally you don't want project players. You want players to be able to bang and give you something now. Now, in a different context, I think he could work well for a load of different Serie A clubs. And if you look at the players that have recovered after difficult times in the Premier League to get back to their best, Serie A is almost certainly the place to do it. I guess the question is, how much does Sterling want to get himself a club, and how much does a club want to commit to him being a medium-term project than someone right now? Signing him for 6 months is pointless. We know what he can be, but it's going to take a while to get him there.
Yeah. OK, well, the Mail, I should say, reporting that he is willing to accept less than a third of his reported £325,000 a week salary at Chelsea, which, of course, makes it much more likely that sides will come in for him. I want to move on to Axel Disasi, though, James, the only remaining member of the Chelsea bomb squad, it seems. Now, he would prefer to stay in London amid interests from England, Germany, Italy and France. We've heard this before regarding Sterling in the past, haven't we, as well? So, if that's the case, what are Disasi's options?
It's a tough one. I always find it tough when players come out and say, I prefer to stay in a certain situation, because it doesn't give you too many options when you actually break it down. And it's the same with Raheem Sterling. Probably one of the difficulties he had while at Chelsea was the options were so limited in London after the loan spell with Arsenal. Now, Axel Disasi...
got to break into the...
Go for it.
Briefly, mate, we've got some significant breaking news coming in because Crystal Palace are currently discussing an offer that they have received from AC Milan for Jean-Philippe Mateta. Milan want to sign him either now or in the summer. Signing him before Monday's deadline will become more likely if Milan can move a player out. Palace also want to get a replacement before Mateta can leave. Evan Gerson is coming in on loan from Aston Villa, but he is more of a winger. Palace's deal for Wolves striker Jørgen Strand Larsen hangs in the balance with 4 days to go in the window. This was something that was coming out of Sky in Italy. Big news this would be, wouldn't it, Andy?
Yeah, and I guess there's a knock-on effect in terms of what would it mean for Nicholas Füllkrug. Now, that might not be a big deal to a lot of people, but I think it's a big deal to West Ham, who would probably like to get him off the books permanently. And he started pretty well. But I guess when you're talking about absorbing players with Premier League wages, or at least the majority of their Premier League wages, if they're prepared to take pay cuts, can you sign Mateta and then can you sign Füllkrug permanently? Can he work in the same team? Now, look, I think they could work together. And of course, Milan are hoping to be back in the Champions League next season, which would be another thing. But yeah, if they could sort out a deal for the summer, that would make a lot of sense, I think.
And I think it suits the ambition of the player. He's been very open about wanting to play Champions League football. Despite the fact AC Milan not in there this season, the second in Serie A right now, they are chasing the Scudetto. They're chasing Champions League football next year. I would say for a player like Jean-Philippe Mateta, who's looking for that next leap, that next jump into his career, his final big move into his career, this feels like a really positive move for him, something he can get his teeth into, and an exciting move knowing what could be on the horizon next season.
Yeah, you're doing it for sporting reasons if you're him. You're not doing it for money reasons, because if you're doing it for money reasons,
go to
stay in the Premier League. Exactly. Yeah. So I think it reflects well on him.
And would he play week in, week out at Milan? Because he obviously wants to get into that World Cup squad.
Yeah, I think he would. And look, they've really lacked a striker for a lot of this season, and maybe that has stopped them getting to the next level. Bear in mind, they've only lost one game in Serie A last season, and that was this season, and that was the first game of the season to Cremonese before Jamie Vardy was there, unbelievably, because he loves to score against the big teams. But look, I think that extra bit of cutting edge in tight games, I think, will be really important for them. And of course, with Max Allegri as a coach, they play quite defensively. And someone who's used to... The great thing about Mateta, he doesn't need 10 chances a game to score. It's just his age that's really stopping elite clubs going for him.
OK, significant. A reminder of the breaking news. Jean-Philippe Mateta's time at Crystal Palace could soon be coming to an end. Palace are discussing an offer from AC Milan. He might go this month or in the summer. More on that to come. Welcome back. If you are just joining us, Crystal Palace are currently discussing an offer that they have received from AC Milan for their striker, Jean-Philippe Mateta. Milan want to sign him either now or in the summer. So it could be that Jean-Philippe Mateta finally gets his wish to leave Crystal Palace, and it could even happen in the next couple of days. Now, Nottingham Forest have had a £20 million bid rejected by Brighton for the midfielder Yassin Ayari. Fabian Herzler has just reacted to the speculation and whether they're in the market for a striker.
I'm not taking part in these kind of speculations, so I really enjoy working with Yassin, and he really enjoys working with us. I think he made a great development so far, and he's a Brighton player.
And the last one for me, we've spoken lots about striker. If something happened to Danny Welbeck, for example, it leaves you short in terms of a recognised number 9 sort of thing. Can you completely rule out Evan Ferguson coming back? Do you think you could get someone in on Monday?
I can't rule out anything during the transfer window because of football, everything's possible. But I just want to mention that we still have a good replacement with Babis, and I think he proved it now in several games that he can be a really good striker. We have a lot of position players in the 10 position, so therefore I think the squad is full of potential. The squad is full of quality, full of options, and I can't rule out anything. But like already emphasized it several times, I'm really happy with the squad.
Yeah, having a very good season, isn't he? Yassin Ayari might take a bit more than that to tempt him away from Brighton. We're just going to tie up a few loose ends before we finish the show. We're going to start with Randall Kolo Muani because Juventus have not given up hope of signing him despite Spurs' unwillingness to let him leave. That is according to Sky in Italy. It's an interesting one, Andy, isn't it? Because Kolo Muani was on loan at Juve before he went to Spurs. How badly do they want him back?
A lot, because he loved it there. They loved him there. The problem was the relationship between Juventus and PSG wasn't as smooth as it could have been, and that still lingers a little bit. But I think it would be in everyone's best interest if Spurs had 6 or 7 more players fit. At the moment, how can they afford to let him go? I think that's the issue, timing.
Yeah. Is there any chance Spurs would sanction this, given that injury list?
Look, with 3.5 days left in the window, unless they've got a ready-made replacement who's ready to go, very unlikely. Thomas Frank's been pretty clear throughout that they're in the situation they're in right now in the Premier League, still competing in deep into the Champions League. He needs all his players. He's not willing to let any of them go. So I would say very unlikely.
OK, another reason why this is interesting, because it relates to Manchester United's Joshua Zirkzee, because he's an alternative for Juve if they're unable to sign Kolo Muani. Again, that's from Sky in Italy. Juve seems to be linked with a lot of players this window, a lot of strikers, and nothing's come through of yet. What is their financial situation?
It's let's be loany. That's what they're looking at really this month, because they went out and bought a lot of forward players last summer, notably Jonathan David, who of course came on a free, but there's no such thing as a free transfer in football, as we know. Lo Sapenda, who hasn't really worked out for them so far, and a few other not striker forward players as well. As we said, still got Dusan Vlahovic on the books, which ties up a lot of money. So they can't really go out and spend 40, 50 million on a striker right now. So something more temporary that could turn into something more permanent.
Rumours around Zirkzee all window, really. But what is Man United's start? Has it changed? They still want him, then?
First of all, he made it clear he wants to fight for his place. Yeah. Manchester United have been pretty clear throughout that they're not actively looking to sell the Dutchman in this window. What is interesting, obviously, when you have a change of head coach and you've got a new head coach coming in Michael Carrick, if you look at the last 2 squads for Manchester City and Arsenal game, no Joshua Zirkzee in the squad. So you do look at that and go, hold on a minute, is there going to be a shift and is there going to be a change? But unlikely, but I wouldn't rule that one out.
Right, let's finish with something that also could concern Manchester United. You never know, because Roberto De Zerbi's future at Marseille is looking increasingly uncertain. They've been knocked out of the Champions League. He has been linked with Man United before. Does he want out, Andy?
Well, it was suggested last night that he'd asked to resign. His entourage have denied that completely, but the club have been in talks with him, the board have been in talks with him, because it was so humiliating what happened to them. And yeah, I know we've been celebrating the Trubin goal for Benfica and Jose Mourinho over the last couple of days. But the way that Marseille didn't keep their end of the bargain, lost 3-0 at Club Brugge, was an embarrassment. You know, the first French men's club to win the Champions League, and they were humiliated like that, couldn't even get through to the next round. But there's so much talk about De Zerbi, and is he really an elite coach? That's something that people in France are discussing a lot, and they flip-flop from one way to another over the last couple of weeks. Of course, they beat the erstwhile leaders, Lens, at the weekend, with Ethan Nwaneri scoring as well. So a lot up in the air.
Watch this space. Always a pleasure, Andy. Good to see you. And you, James. We'll be back for Transfer Talk at midday. Don't forget, on deadline day, Charlie Austin, Dan Gosling and Kevin Hatchard will be with us from 7 a.m. As I mentioned, we will be back at midday, myself and James, and a host of Premier League managers we will hear from. All live, looking ahead to the weekend. Transfer show 4 o'clock and 7 o'clock. Coming up, Sky Sports Fan Club with Jay Bothroyd.